Hey guys, we're going to be doing a review today on Suicide Squad. And if you haven't seen Suicide Squad, I will go ahead right now and let you know up front in case you don't want to watch the whole thing. It's worth seeing, and you should see it even if you're just a Marvel fanboy or if you're not that into the superhero thing, because it does some different stuff that's kind of fun. Right? All right, so let's start off with a brief description here. Suicide Squad is the newest evolution of the DC Universe films. What these guys have done is they haven't exactly made their Avengers. That's probably going to come when DC makes the Justice League films. But what they have managed to do is mash up a bunch of heroes and villains together in one tale to achieve a pretty large scope story, that involves a ton of characters. So it's a lot of character development to cram into a small film, and it's hard not to feel shortchanged. But there are some really cool moments and cool character developments that make you want to see more. So, story of the Suicide Squad. These random and various villains, including Deadshot, Harley Quinn, Boomerang, Killer Croc, Diablo, and I think another one called the Enchantress, and one called I always forget his name. Slipknot, right? So Slipknot. This ends up culminating the group of the Suicide Squad. How do they get together? Well, they get together because they've all been locked up in prison, right? Batman and the Flash and all the real heroes of the DC universe have been locking these people up and putting these criminals away in a holding facility. It's kind of a black site, and so the person who manages the black site is given authorization to run a crew, and in the name of national defense and security, they go ahead and authorize this crew to be kind of an anti-terrorist group if they can be kept in check by their clandestine organization leader. So everybody's been caught and they're serving triple or quadruple life sentences, and for every job they go on, they get to reduce some time off of that sentence, and then they get to maybe get out of prison, because everybody's got personal motivations, right? Harley Quinn wants to see the Joker again, Deadshot wants to see his daughter again, and other characters are motivated for different reasons. Some people just want out of prison. It's a crappy place, right? So the story starts with everybody pretty much locked up, and everybody being twisted and manipulated so that they can utilize them as a tool. And the story quickly develops the villain character fairly rapidly. The villain character is developed right away because the villain character is one of the group. One of the group, actually, predictably, kind of, you figure one of them is going to go bad at least, right? Goes bad. And it's a powerful metahuman, and so this character is capable of causing all sorts of destruction, and was kind of unforeseen. They thought they had control of this character, and now they don't. So the group has to go and try and rein in this character who's causing destruction throughout the city, just like every fucking superhero movie these days, right? It's just, a big CGI, stomp all of it. It's basically like a modern Godzilla. Let's see how many buildings we can destroy. So how well do they do that? They do it pretty good, as far as superhero movies go. It kicks along, and they develop the villain, they fight the villain, and then they end the film, right? And then they foreshadow for the next film. And so it's worth seeing just because there are elements that I'm about to discuss in more detail that will catch your attention, that like it caught mine. All right, so you've got a brief synopsis, you got the brief story arc, but I'm going to go into a little more detail now. The film starts out with like a montage of every character. Of course, the two characters getting the best montages are Will Smith and Harley Quinn. They each get the larger introduction in the film. The rest of the roster of the Suicide Squad gets these montages that are very brief introductions, all the way down to Killer Croc, who gets really cheapskated on his introduction. There's nothing there. So Deadshot, he's an assassin who is for hire, and Batman ultimately ends up catching him and locking him away. I'm not giving you, critical parts of the story that really matter or anything. It's just the way it goes. And so that's the why, how he got in prison. Harley Quinn, of course, they do a montage of her running around with the Joker. They even do a character development montage from the Arkham Asylum, where she is originally developed into Harley Quinn because of her backslide into psychosis, and that happens because of her relationship with the Joker that's developed during that time. So the Harley Quinn character's montage shows her essentially getting, of course, caught and locked up. And the Joker that's his queen, and he wants to get her out of prison. And so she's in prison awaiting a rescue. And the other characters they go into the Diablo character. This is a villain character. It's a very brief introduction where he's essentially turning himself into the police because they say his wife or girlfriend or whatever, his gangsta chick died, and that was depressed him and I guess made him rethink his life of crime and his life of violence, and he wanted to turn himself in to stop. And so he got himself out of the game by turning himself in. And then you got the June Moon, the sorceress. Her character, you see like a chick archaeology lady. She's spelunking a little bit in some jungle somewhere, probably in South America, and she rapidly stumbles into a talisman that releases an entity that attaches itself to her body. And this entity is the sorceress. So she's really two people. She's June Moon, the human, and the sorceress is kind of a dark entity that's bonded itself to her physical body. And you have that character, right? So it's a very brief introduction, but that character's there. That's a pretty powerful character. So is Diablo. He's a meta, and he's pretty powerful too. Then you have Captain Boomerang, which is, the montage leading into him. He's kind of like, rough and tumble thief character with very low morals, and he's caught by the Flash and put in prison. The final character that they give really no introduction to, I guess Flag, the team leaders, he deserves some introduction too, but I'm not going to focus on that. I'm focusing on more like the Suicide Squad minus Flag. Killer Croc, their introduction is really weak for him. They basically give him a line. They're like, we put him down here and he became what we wanted him to. It was a stupid, cheesy line, and they essentially just start his story from the cell. Like the first introduction and any backstory, there's no montaging of a backstory. You just see him in the cell going forward with not much more than a sentence to quantify his entire existence, right? Is an underutilized character, and I'm going to get there in a minute too. All right, so, oh gosh, and I already forgot. Slipknot. If you're familiar with Adam Beach and you've seen the Wind Talkers, or he's been in a bunch of movies, I'm not going to go into it all. You're familiar with the Native American actor Adam Beach, and he plays the character Slipknot, and he's kind of brought in last minute there, and you can see him in the preview right now, flying up and doing some weird stuff. And so, and Katana, that's a character that they bring in a little bit later too, but so to round out the crew. So you actually get, a larger crew than the base introduction of characters. They bring in a couple more and briefly as after a little bit of time goes on. And so what you end up seeing is the development of the crew happens pretty quickly, and the montage is fun. The montage is fun, and all the introductory scenes are fun. And when you see those initially, you want to see more right away, because as they're introducing the characters, they're using really great CGI graphics and some pretty cool editing tricks, and just clipping along so well that the pace is exciting. They use a really great soundtrack. They use a lot of classic rock and to introduce their characters, and so it's I don't know, it was a really great mood building for the first 30 minutes of the film. And that's when it starts to derail a little bit. This movie doesn't hold pace for the entire film. That really fun pace that the previews make you feel, and even that the initial portion of the film makes you feel, starts to get lost right after they get the deal and get released, and they all get terms to join up as a crew and go fight this force. So as the team's being developed, Sorceress checks out instantly and goes and finds some other dark entity that was back in the cave, breaks open a little thing, and now she's got her evil brother spirit, or evil companion spirit, to help mess stuff up with her. So you kind of got two bad guys in the movie. Sorceress is working on revitalizing herself so she has more power, so she can take over the world, right? And she now has a companion to help her do that, and they're starting out by actually, which doing something that's kind of cool, which is they are taking uh, humans and making them slaves, and they're making mutant slaves out of the humans. So they're capturing you, making you worship them in some sort of like brief ceremony, and then through sorcery and through magic, really, they morph you into a mutant, and then you're like this like mutant soldier servant for them to in their weird meta army to try and take over the world. And so they're infecting people at a rapid rate, and they're taking over the city at a rapid rate. So the tension is building as the Suicide Squad really has to get dispatched on their first mission and figure out what they're going to do about all these problems and how they're going to work together as a team. And so there's no round of it's not easy for them, right? So it's not easy for them to begin working together. Every character has different motivation and different level of commitment to this task, and some of them just want to escape. For instance, Harley Quinn. Harley Quinn has received a couple messages from the guards, and she's waiting for the Joker to go ahead and try to intervene at some point and help her get out of this mess. Well, they've all got implants and trackers in them, and the trackers are pretty serious, and you find out how serious they are pretty early on. Very early on, as soon as they're all released into the city and they're doing their walk through the city montage. It's supposed to be all cool, looking for characters to fight and looking for villains and whatnot, talking trash to each other, and fitting in as many one-liners as they can in these walk around this destroyed apocalyptic city montage that they proceed to basically do for the rest of the movie. When that initially starts, you're wondering what's going to happen, and very quickly the first character tries to make his escape, and their head is blown off, just bam, instantly, because these trackers that are embedded in the spine, they can be activated as an explosive device, and so you lose a character almost instantly, and they don't even get to like do anything yet. And so you lose a character almost instantly before any action starts happening, and so you realize, okay, that's pretty serious. I may end up losing more characters throughout this film, and that should reinvigorate your interest. So they have their first few waves of the mutated soldiers to fight through, which make for some pretty fun fights in the middle of the film. But that is the introductory fight. Imagine Rage Virus zombies, right, from the 28 Days Later kind of things. These things move pretty fast, they run, they're pretty brutal, and they're just coming after you in large groups. And so you get to see each character display their particular skill sets fighting these things, and except for Diablo, who's holding back at first, and eventually, finally, because he's nonviolent, he turned himself in, right, and he is holding back, but eventually the crew convinces him to let go, and you realize he's one of the most powerful characters in the entire group. Diablo is arguably the most powerful character of the entire Suicide Squad because of his the brutalness of his ability, and something you find out that can be done with his ability, another level of a tier of his ability that you kind of don't really realize exists until he accesses it for you. So it's pretty cool to watch the development of some of the characters, and some of them weren't so cool to watch, right? So you're expecting a little more out of Harley Quinn, but she really does just kind of she's not a metahuman, right? Harley Quinn's just a lady, and she's with a baseball bat, as compared to someone cool like Deadshot, who seems to just have almost an otherworldly skill, even though he's not meta, and some of the other characters that are either a full-on mutant like Killer Croc, or another character that is, like Diablo, that has actually a really special power. Harley Quinn, her abilities seem equally as lame as Captain Boomerang, if you've ever thrown a fucking boomerang, I'm going to let you know right now, if you've ever thrown a fucking boomerang and tried to bounce it, hit something or kill something or do anything, like thought it was a weapon and you were a kid and you threw it at a tree, boomerangs aren't cool weapons. I don't know who started like the idea that a boomerang is, some violently awesome weapon that you can use to kill things really easily, because it's not. And if you can, then more power to you. You're a really amazing weapon specialist, because I don't know anyone who, and maybe I should look it up on YouTube. After this, I'll go on YouTube and I'll look up badass boomerang guys, and I'm sure there's some guys killing things with it, but it's a little hard to bite, right? So just like it becomes a little hard to bite off that Harley Quinn is standing her own with some pretty badass metahumans and mutants and Deadshot, whose abilities are just, God, they're so cool. They make all the other characters look lame, right? And Deadshot is really the character that you want to see more of a focus on in the film. This film left me wanting to see a Deadshot solo, and more than anything. And I'll get back to that in a second, because it really was pushing a different, it was foreshadowing the development of other characters as focal and interest points way more than Deadshot, and that was a mistake. So, you're watching them prove their muster as each character is using their abilities throughout the city, and Harley Quinn finds a way to prove herself even with her baseball bat. And Killer Croc, even though he doesn't do crap except for just kind of toss a couple people around, he tosses them around well enough. He's proven himself as a character. Boomerang throws a couple of boomerangs, and it does his thing. So it is what it is, man. The film at this point starts to feel a little long, and it starts to feel a little lame. Like, Harley Quinn walking through the city with her bat on her shoulder, it's like talking trash. That is really starts to stretch itself at this point in the film, and you feel like they're doing it over and over. And not only do they use one street scene where they're walking through, checking things out, kind of wondering where their next fight's gonna be. They do it like 3 or 4 fucking times, so you get pretty bored of that pretty quickly. And they use it up, man. They use it all up, and eventually, characters collide, right? The Joker is going to collide with this crew, and his attempts to try and get Harley back are going to screw up some of their mission. They are eventually going to get to their boss. That's going to and that's going to be the end game scenario for the whole movie. Is what happens when we get to the boss? Will the boss escape? Will there be foreshadowing? The boss comes back in a different form later. Do we lose a character completely because the boss is going to take someone else with them? All those questions, do get successfully answered. But I will make a point about how disconnected so much of the story feels. At like 3/4 of the way through the film, you feel like they lost it, and I feel like they did a lot of story continuity matching and like line introduction in post-shooting. I feel like in post-shooting they got to the point where they realized, fuck, we got a ton of awesome footage here, but what we're missing are critical lines and critical action sequences to get us to the next portion of the film. And so you feel like there are these portions that they saved money for, these reshoots that they went back and stuffed in later and tried to create continuity in that second half that's really disconnected and is really missing, man. So that kind of sucks, I'll get into now. I'm not going to go into the story anymore because I'm going to get into endgame spoilers, right? So it's time to stop really talking about the story, and it's time to get into standout performances, outstanding performances, a positive or negative. Will Smith. Will Smith was awesome in this movie. I feel like he largely carried the film. It was his character that I wanted to know more about. It was his character that I wanted to see more of. It was his character that they connected you largely to, with a backstory that had a little heart to it, that made you want to come back to his story. Harley Quinn didn't do that bad. She's probably a great Harley Quinn. She really is. She did what she could. They overutilized some of the cheesy comic book line moments for her, and they could have gone back and given her a little more depth of realism and developed her like they did Will Smith's character, Deadshot. However, they seemed like they were splitting her time and focusing on the new Joker development, which I'll get to next, so much that they had to overlook some of Harley's, developing her realistically instead of more keeping her as a comic trope. Joker. Jared Leto's Joker, I'm sure he did the best he could with the part. It wasn't easy to do. If you want to see great performances from Leto, you can look back into his past filmography and see tons of them. Requiem for a Dream, one of his early and one of the best. And start there and go, because there's other great stuff from him. But Thug Gangster Joker, this is, the internet is referencing, this is the Thug Gangster Joker. I feel that's accurate. I'm also referencing it as the Thug Gangster Joker is the most unappealing Joker that has been released in the cinematic universe. And that's even for people who feel like the Jack Nicholson doesn't hold up anymore. And I'm part of that camp where if you go back and you watch the Michael Keaton and you watch the Jack Nicholson, I don't feel like it holds up as much as it absolutely used to, but he's still awesome. But as after Heath Ledger, it's hard not to get a Dick Tracy vibe when you watch Jack Nicholson's performance of the Joker. It almost feels that campy, and but it's a crossover that's awesome, and the allegories that are used in the first film with the Joker are so good. Hubba hubba hubba, money money money. It's some of the best stuff ever. This Joker, highly undesirable. A lot of times for them to achieve the effect of this Joker's zaniness and psychosis right before he's about to do something weird, or he's revving himself up to either victimize someone or do something kind of outrageous. They use editing tactics. They'll like throw color on the screen and they screw him up and speed him up and make him do something to achieve that psychosis feel. And it almost feels like old horror film editing tricks that they used in like House on Haunted Hill and stuff like that. And so I don't know if I really I don't know if I really appreciated it as much as some other people seem to have. And I think if you watch the film, you're gonna have to swallow a bitter pill to watch this Joker. Especially, and I'm going to give you the hint here now because I've discussed the three characters. The character that they should have foreshadowed the most was Deadshot, and they should have focused on him and led that into a solo film. Unfortunately, what you're left with in this film is the strong feeling that the two characters they're foreshadowing the most to promote for the DC cinematic franchise are Harley Quinn and Joker. Those are the two characters they want you to focus on, and it feels like they really want you to focus on the foreshadowing of that, and this was like a largely a building story for them to have a launching point for another film. It sucks, man, because that was the wrong focal point for this film, and I hope that they don't reprise Jared Leto's, this version of Jared Leto's Joker in the upcoming DC films, because it's gonna really it's going to really take away something. So, notable mentions for the film. All right, every film, has different notable mentions, and it depends on what kind of film it is. If it's a slow-burning drama film, I'm not going to make CGI a notable mention for that film. If that's supposed to be a standout quality of the film and it fails, then it's going to get a notable mention as a failure, or it might get a notable mention as a positive. So, in this film, notable mentions are pacing that was done right in the first half, and it was really montaged well and developed well. And then a notable mention is pacing that was failed in the second half. Okay, one of the largest notable mentions for the film were use of CGI and editing. This film was spliced and diced and interjected with CGI in a way that made it, and what they did in the editing room with the music and of course the mood building with the music was fantastic. So that's worth mentioning. Notable mentions for things that that were the worst. Definitely, some of the underdeveloped characters, some of the underdeveloped villain motivation didn't seem to make sense, and some of the and the foreshadowing and the overbuilding of the gangster thug Joker character, which was highly undesirable. So those things were, kind of the best and the worst of the film. I'm leaving a lot of stuff out because I'm trying to condense some of these reviews and not pontificate for forever and just keep going endlessly, because I can talk about this stuff for hours and hours and hours and hours, and it just takes too much time to go back over the footage and try to edit it down, and it drives me crazy. And so anyways, I guess it's time to score this film. This film is going to get and I had to think a lot about this, but overall, I'm gonna be pretty good to this movie. I'm gonna give this film a 7 out of 10, and I'm gonna give it a 7 out of 10 um, because it did achieve some of its goals, and it was a really fun ride for most of the film. And the only points that I'm docking it for are, or for the previously mentioned, a little bit of hole in story, a little bit of underdeveloped character, and a little bit of pushing too much of something that the audience, I think, really didn't want. And you missed the mark there in your film. And so overall, this is a fantastic movie. It really is fun, and you should go out and see it and support the DC franchise and building these characters and going it further in this direction, because they're doing something slightly different than Marvel. Even though a lot of these superhero movies all end in montages of large citywide destruction at the end, they are doing something different, and it feels different than the Marvel film franchises. And so this is a great movie, and you should go out and see it. You should give it your money, and you should give it your time, because seeing more stuff developed like this is the direction that we want to go. I have to say, it's reminds me in a lot of ways of Guardians of the Galaxy, which I think was so freaking awesome that it's still my favorite of the Marvel Cinematic Universe releases. So I'm going to cut this review off now. I'm going to call it good, and in the interest of time, and I'm going to see you guys next time. All right, take care. Bye.